Hello everyone, today I'm looking at the game Dead Rising. This is a very, incredibly freaking aggravating game. It came out at the age of like 2006 roughly, and so it was kind of at the just the climax of the whole zombie fiasco, or the whole zombie wave that took over gaming as like a mainstay of a video game narrative, that you just always had a zombies mode. Call of Duty World at War had a friggin' zombies mode. It was just something grained in, and I think this is the first game that really I remember came out that really encapsulated that idea that like, oh, zombies are this like staple game. And so this is just a pure zombie game. That being said, though, this game is very complex and it's incredibly janky and incredibly broken, and you kind of have to get used to the jank and adapt to it, or you just kind of, allow it to defeat you. But it's one of those rare occasions where I know I'd say a lot of games are janky, but this game actually is janking, and it kind of works to the benefit of the game, that it knows it's janky, and you just kind of have to live with it and work around like the jankiness, which is a very old school game kind of thing to do. But yeah, it does actually work. You play as Frank West, a news reporter / journalist who wants to get the story about this zombie viral outbreak or whatever kind of chaos is happening. And he's flying in on helicopter, and the guy drops him off on top of the roof of this shopping mall, and he says, "I'll be back to pick you up in 3 days." And so Frank's motivation in the story is really just to get the scoop on the story and publish this thing in the paper and get photos of the entire ordeal and become world famous. Of course, he gets in way over his head. It turns out this zombie apocalypse is the real deal, and civilization might be doomed. And so basically what the appeal of Dead Rising was is that you are basically in this shopping center, this kind of place of paradise, and you have to use all the items in the shopping center essentially to defend yourself and take out the zombies. So you can go to the sports place and get a baseball bat, and you can go to this the extreme sports area and get a skateboard and skate through the zombies. There's also the real meta of this game actually is using the restaurants and being able to essentially the fruit juice place and basically able to make a smoothie that gives Frank extra speed and ridiculous health and all these other crazy boosts by blending fruit together and making fruit smoothies. The absolute end game here is using fruit smoothies to basically make yourself incredibly powerful. There are all other things you can throw, like garbage cans, propane tanks. Eventually you do find a gun, but honestly guns are pretty rare in this game, and it's incredibly frustrating because a lot of the bosses also have firearms and guns. And so Frank starts working with the survivors and trying to basically get the survivors back to the safe room, which is another aspect to it as well, that it'll display certain people and a kind of their route where they're stuck, and there's a way to fully 100% the game. You save as many survivors as possible by going at the most direct routes, and basically going through the bathrooms have these secret passageways which you use to you use the bathroom to save, but also to transfer people very quickly around the mall. And honestly, I had no idea about this option as I was playing the game, so a lot of people that I saved just end up dying because I would spend like a whole day just trying to get them to the other side of the mall basically. And that's a cool thing too. When the guy says he's going to come pick you up in 3 days, he actually means that there is a timer in the top right at all times showing you your time left in the game until the chopper arrives. So basically you have this mall and this time limit, and I think the time limit really adds a different dynamic to the whole aspect of the game, that because things are limited, you have a certain amount of people to save, and no one's going to wait for you, and certain events will happen and transpire. Certain people will die, and if you miss it, you miss it. There's no way around it. And so it's a very interesting dynamic to the game. There are also even certain survivors that if you do get them back, some of them turn against you and cause a mutiny, and if you can't talk them down, they'll basically turn rogue on you, or they will end up being psychopaths and killing the other survivors. So there's a whole, in order to actually 100% this game and get the quote-unquote good ending, you really honestly need a guide, because it's really, really difficult without it. Aside from that, there are also these other bosses called psychopaths. And so I love this aspect of the game where, okay, yeah, there's a zombie outbreak, whatever. But then you have these people in the shopping mall that like either still are doing their job or they're just completely insane and they have a huge health bar and you have to take them out. And Carlito is the most reoccurring boss who basically is tied to the reason why the virus was, revealed or, let loose in the first place. And so he has his own kind of backstory about biochemical warfare against the United States and all that kind of stuff. And again, there's other people where, the most famous one of all is, the grocery store manager who says he won't allow vandalism in his store while there's a zombie apocalypse outside. And he basically has his shopping cart and he charges you with it. And so he's one of the bosses. There's another guy who basically is the butcher in the back of the butcher shop who tries to, basically eat everyone and basically turn them into food essentially for the zombies. There's another guy who is like an ex-army marine guy who like works in the hardware store and says, this reminds me of Vietnam and all this stuff. You also have a clown with 2 chainsaws that chases you. So yeah, you have these really crazy kooky characters that are set into this semi-realistic scenario where it's like, okay, there's just zombies, but no, there's also these absolutely crazy personalities which add to the dynamic of the game. Also throughout the game, you'll get different more life as you level up and go through the game itself, and your life bars will increase as well as other experience points, or rather as you get more experience points. And you'll automatically level up skills, so you won't have to allocate certain things anyway. So yeah, this game is very high-strung. It's probably one of the most aggravating games I've ever played, simply because, and also one of the coolest games because, like, when you get hit by a zombie or nicked, like, it's really, really frustrating because you could take them out, even once you get these super powerful weapons. Something that I love about Dead Rising is the scalability. From when you start, you're just basically defenseless. You have, basically baseball bats and things that break in, very few hits. You're throwing magazines at zombies, and by the end of the game, you have an entire arsenal of weapons that you can just do to decimate the entire, population of zombies in the mall. And again, speaking about Jank, there's also one boss fight with Isabel where she essentially is on this motorcycle and she basically keeps ramming into you and shooting you. And, a lot of these boss fights are extremely aggravating and broken, but the thing is, you can break the game back if you stand in one position and you can basically block the boss and get them cornered and basically, cheese them. It's kind of like what you do. This game is very unfair, but you can be very unfair back, and that's kind of like a very old school kind of feel to it. Again, another aspect to the gameplay is that Frank can take photos of characters and zombies, and he'll actually get points, and that'll go to your overall score, which will increase your player points and again increase your level and your health by extension. And so you can get gruesome people getting killed and eaten, certain characters screaming in horror. There's the rare sexy shot where you take a picture of the secretary woman with her buttoned down shirt. And so all these things come together to make a really weird, unique experience. I've never, ever played anything like Dead Rising, and I don't think I ever will again. It all comes together into this weird kind of half-broken, half-baked stew that's actually very memorable as an experience and kind of works together. Something that I really loved by the end of the game is, again, speaking of Jank, is you actually get like a full-on car and you can just ram through all the zombies, and where you might kill like 100 zombies in a day, you kill 100 zombies in a couple seconds while you drive around the underground parking garage and just mow down zombie after zombie. It's incredibly cathartic once you reach the end of the game because it allows you to do so much crazy stuff. Speaking of cars, the most iconic thing probably about this game is this one boss, which is the lunatic Jeep guys. And essentially there's these bunch of guys who are, for some reason, these escaped convicts who are riding around the central courtyard of the shopping mall in a military Jeep with a 50 cal on the back. And what's insane about this entire scenario is that like they just like that should not, like, it's just not possible. And they play this one song whenever you're in this area, and it has this like bass line that it opens up with, and it's the most like fear-inducing like sound I've ever heard, because you essentially just know that you're going to get completely screwed over or not. And so the other thing about this car is that sometimes it can just get stuck in a tree and they can't move at all, and you're completely safe. And sometimes they'll follow you across the map and gun you down. There's nothing you can do. And the really frustrating thing is the only way to save is in the bathrooms of this game. So there's quite a few times where you'll lose a lot of time. You'll basically get knocked back, maybe even like an hour or something at the most, if you're not very frugal with how you save. This game also, I remember the amount of gore and blood in it was very revolutionary. I think I had never seen a game that had this much gore, and especially the games that were really trying, like Mortal Kombat or something. But yeah, I was really surprised by that. And yeah, this has become a staple of a game in so many different ways. And again, I found the best healing items to be jars of orange juice or wine bottles that would fuel almost all of your health back. There was also one crazy moment where I was able to go into the gym and get the double barbell and basically ram through a stream of zombies with that. It's just so much fun to experiment and see how much damage you can do with the tools that you were given in this shopping mall. It's just really interesting and exciting and really cool. And again, it's just really crazy how many different twists and turns happen in this game. I never know what to expect next, what crazy lunatic boss is going to show up, what kind of plot twist or development is going to happen with, Carlito, whatever crazy character I'm going to meet next. It's just really, really, really funny and really crazy. And it's just crazy how the game kind of ramps up to this point where you're like diffusing bombs, you're like doing all this secret agent stuff, and the scope of the game just gets way out of control. And even though it is, again, very janky, there's something about it that makes it feel so timeless. There's something about it that makes it so extremely weird and unique. I've never played games like there's one part in this game where you need to pick up like a Japanese translation magazine so you can talk to these Japanese survivors and you can tell them to basically follow you. There's another magazine where if you pick it up, it increases your durability of your weapons by 3 times. So there's so many ways to break this game and cheat and find your own play style and something that works for you. And just experimenting and figuring things out without things being really labeled for you. Yes, they label like your objectives and what you have to do, but how you do that and the tools that you have available to you is completely up to your imagination. And it's just really cool to see a game treat the player as, I don't know, like a mature adult who can like figure it out on their own kind of thing. And if you figure out a strategy better than most, then you'll probably be better at that. But there's a way to accomplish everything. And again, I just love the fact that time limit is there because it encourages the player to figure out the most optimal route. But yeah, Dead Rising is a very strange, very memorable, very crazy game. And while the sequels definitely are kind of crazy, I feel like they leaned too much into the quirkiness of it, and their main characters weren't as essentially serious. Just for example, I played the beginning of Dead Rising 2 just to see what it was, and I really liked the main character because he's this father figure trying to save his daughter. But the world has kind of adapted to the fact that zombies survival apocalypse is a thing, and they've turned zombies and slaughtering them into like a sport/mini game, and the whole sense of urgency and semi-realism is totally gone, and it's just, I don't know, it's really just not the same and just very, very different. At least with Frank West, you kind of feel that the guy is kind of struggling. He's in a weird scenario, and he basically needs to do his best to make the best of the situation. And it's also really interesting how, Isabella, she ends up becoming your friend and befriending you, even though despite she's basically working with the terrorists and she had a falling out with them. It's just really, really fascinating how this game is structured, how it works, how broken it is, and yet how fun it is in its broken state and nature. It's just really, really interesting. And all the weird things you can pull off that are intuitive to the player. Something else I should have mentioned that's really interesting is as the game goes on, as the days move on, there's obviously a higher difficulty, but different kinds of enemies appear. So by the second day, you get the cult appear, and the cult are these guys who want the destruction of the world, and they basically show up in these yellow raincoats and have these weird knives and like ceremonial bows, and it just like, this is so freaking weird, but I'm here for it, you know. And it feels like something, even though someone might be like turned off, the whole zombie survival aspect is there. And it reminds me a little bit of a Kojima game where you start off with a very plausible, semi-realistic scenario, and you just kind of get crazier and crazier, and you bring people along for this insane ride. But yeah, by the end of this game, you will have the song Gone Guru ingrained into your mind as a very palatable sense of fear. You will have an appreciation for game design and not just, you know, properly well-made games. The design here is really good. Its execution is just a little bit, again, frustrating. And again, just knowing the weird tricks to every boss, every kind of encounter. Otherwise, you'll just die super, super quickly, and it's incredibly frustrating. So it's like, everything in this game is like one weird trick. Oh, if you had this magazine equipped, you have double health, or you have, you know, an increased, durability for your weapons or attack or something. And so if you go in playing it blind, as you should for the first time of every game, it's going to be very difficult and very aggravating, but also very addictive. And it's this dual nature that's really the heart of Dead Rising. It's incredibly frustrating, but incredibly interesting and quirky and interesting and weird. Oh, and I forgot, on the third day, the military shows up to wipe out everyone involved with the incident, and so you have like SWAT guys with guns that show up. And so in the final kind of run to the final helicopter, you go with Isabella, and you have to make it through all these SWAT guys and gun them down, and most of the zombies and everything are wiped out by those guys by then, and all the lunatics as well. And so you just have to make it through the SWAT guys as this ultimate final piece. And so finally what happens at the end of the game, quote unquote, the helicopter comes to pick up Frank, and of course it crashes and gets shot down, and it's very stupid how it happens. There's a zombie somehow in the helicopter. He's been driving and flying this thing for like miles, and he only just realized just as he was in sight of Frank. Anyway, it's very stupid, but I know I like it. And so you think that's the end of the game. However, what is established then is that everyone has basically been infected with this virus, and the only cure is to gather these 10 queen bees. And so basically there are certain zombies in the game that are special infected, and they have these parasites or viruses inside of them. And so if you kill them and get a queen bee, and you actually get it as an item, what happens is when you use it is you throw it on the ground and you crush it, and all the zombies in your radius kind of like just immediately die. And so it's this kind of like Trump weapon. But in the aftermath of the time limit expiring, what you have to do is basically have this little kind of extra moment where you have to get 10 queens, and then Isabella can issue basically a vaccine or the ability to let her basically escape the shopping mall. Also, there's these other parts where if you do get taken in by the cult, you end up getting tied up and missing all of your weapons, and you just sneak out and make your way back to where you were. And they have this like weird box with sleeping powder in it, which is how they do it, and if it hits you once, you're basically done. So this game is again incredibly unfair a lot of the time, and it's about knowing all the angles. This is definitely a game guide kind of game. And so basically the real ending of the game is you get the 10 queens, you manufacture the vaccine with Isabella, and you have the final kind of run outside of the shopping mall. And it ends with one final lunatic battle where this military commander guy has basically gone insane, and he basically challenges you to a fist fight on top of a tank like it's Metal Gear Solid or something. And it's like, okay, sure, whatever. And the final ending to the game, sadly, hilariously, is Frank basically screaming up into the sky when he's surrounded by all these zombies and be like, oh, it's useless. Again, there's just so many weird, quirky, interesting things that are in Dead Rising that I absolutely adore it. The one thing I didn't like is that your photo camera has like a capacity for photos that you can take. And of course, by the end of the game, it ranks you on your performance and everything and how well you've done. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a very strange, very interesting, very fun, and yet very broken game. It's definitely something worth playing and seeing how much influence it's had on the industry in terms of zombie games in general. And the fact it got at least 3 sequels, all of which didn't seem to be that great and kind of become derivative. But, you know, it is what it is. And playing it in modern day is very... it's still fun, it's entertaining, and it's extremely frustrating as well. But it's worth it for all the memes, though, honestly, of like the supermarket guy and you know, the friggin' the army jeep convicts. It's an experience for sure. Anyway, guys, I will see you later. Bye.